Hello everyone, so we're going to solve Cambridge IGCSE paper Feb March series 2025-22. So let's get started. So first question says, the diagram shows containers of gas at the same temperature. All containers have the same size. So we can see all the containers having the same size, but we are increasing the pressure. So if pressure increases, the number of particles, the gas particles will start increasing. So our correct answer is A. Second, a cooling curve of a substance shown. Now over here, as we talk about the cooling curve means heat is released. So if you see here, U to V, it converts into gas, W to X converts into liquid, and Y to Z converts into solid. So which statement is correct? Between U and V, the substance is condensing? No, it is not condensing, it is converting into gaseous. Between V and W, heat is being absorbed? No, the heat is released. Okay, the heat is released from the surrounding. Between W and X, the particles are close and randomly arranged? Yes, this is correct. Between Y and Z, substance is changing from liquid to a solid. So we can directly see it's not changing into liquid to solid, it's actually a solid. Next question. Sample of 4 gases are released in room temperature at the same time. The gases are carbon dioxide, hydrogen chloride, hydrogen sulfide, and nitrogen dioxide. So if you know this is rate of diffusion is inversely proportional to the molecular mass of gas. So we will write all the molecular mass of all the gases which has been given. And if you would see here, if the molecular mass of gas decreases, so our rate of diffusion increases. So over here, rate of diffusion increases means it diffuses fastest. So over here, 34 is the correct answer for the molecular mass of gas which gets reduced. If we have a less molecular mass, rate of diffusion will be faster. So the answer is hydrogen sulfide. Sulfur atoms can form the negative ion S2 minus. So over here we should know that S has 16 outermost electronic configuration, and outermost shell will be 2, 8, 6. And if it's S2 minus, that means the electron has been lost. So over here 2, not lost, it has been gained. So 2, 8, 8. So we will see and compare if all these atoms will be having same as S2 minus. So argon, if you would see, it's going to be 2, 8, 8. Okay, 10 and 18, which contains 18, 10 and 18. Calcium will be having 2, 8, 8, 2. And oxygen is going to have, oxygen first word as oxygen. So oxygen will be having 2, 6. But it has gained electrons, so it's going to be 2, 8. Okay, so how many of these atoms or ions have same electronic configuration as S2 minus? So we can see we can have only one as an atom, so it's going to be P. Element T has 2 isotopes. Which statement about these isotopes is correct? They have different chemical properties. No, they have similar chemical properties. They have same chemical properties because they have the same number of outer shell electrons, which is correct. They have the same nucleon number because the sum of the number of protons and electrons is the same. No, they needs to be different. They have different positions in the periodic table. No, it's going to be same. So the correct answer is B. Lithium is in group number 1 of the periodic table. Nitrogen is in group number 5 of the periodic table. So if you would see, group number 1 is there, so it's going to have L plus 1 because it's always going to lose 1 electron, while for nitrite it's going to be 3 minus, it's going to gain the electron. So if you would see here, each lithium atom loses 1 electron, which is correct. Each nitrogen atom gains 3 electrons to form an nitride ion. Next question. For which covalent compound does the dot and cross diagram correctly show the outer shell? So if you would see here, hydrogen is having a lone pair, which is wrong. B, again wrong. C, it's correct because over here it's been shared with the nitrogen outermost shell. Electrons are being shared with the hydrogen, and over here two nitrogen, that means two lone pair of electrons are not being shown, so this is wrong. So the correct answer is C. Next question. Which row identifies the positive and negative particles? So in the giant metallic lattice, positive particles will be, if you see about the metallic lattice, it's going to be like this. Okay, so positive is going to be cations and the delocalized electrons. Which formula for the name compound is correct? So calcium oxide will go have the same molecular formula. Cobalt chloride is going to have CuCl2. Sulfur dioxide will be not be having this, but it's going to have this CSO2. And copper anhydrous copper 2 sulfate going to be a copper sulfate. So the correct answer is calcium oxide. The equation for the reaction of magnesium with dilute sulfuric acid is shown. So over here 1 mole of magnesium is corresponding to 1 mole of H2SO4, giving 1 mole of magnesium sulfate and 1 mole of hydrogen. Over here molecular mass of magnesium sulfate is given as 120. Which mass of magnesium sulfate is formed when 12 gram of magnesium completely reacts with disulfuric acid? So first over here 12 gram is given, and they are asking us to find out for magnesium sulfate. So what we can do is, first we have to remove the number of moles for magnesium. So what we are going to do is, we're going to take number of moles formula, which is mass upon molar mass. Mass upon molar mass of magnesium. So mass we already know from the periodic table, get an idea, which is molar mass, which is given to us, which is 24, and mass is already given to us over here in the question. And once we divide this, we're going to get 0.5, which is 0.5. Now we have to find the magnesium sulfate, but before that we must know the molar ratio of these two. So first mole ratio of these two. So first 1 mole of magnesium is reacting and giving out 1 mole of magnesium sulfate. So if I'm getting the number of moles for magnesium 0.5, so I'm going to get same for magnesium sulfate. So I'm going to write 0.5 mole. So if I have a 0.5 mole, again I'm going to use the same formula. Mass we do not know, we need to find what is the mass of magnesium sulfate upon the molar mass, which is given to us as 120. So if you divide this, if you multiply this 0.5 multiplied by 120, you're going to get 60 gram. An organic compound Q contains carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Q contains 40%, carbon contains Q contains 40% carbon and 6.7 hydrogen by mass. So first we'll make the column for carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, and carbon is given as 40%, hydrogen is given as 6.7%. So if I want to find the oxygen, what I'm going to do is 100 minus 40 minus 6.7, which I'm going to get 53.3. So over here again we're gonna do what? We're gonna take this mass and divide with relative atomic mass. Relative atomic mass of carbon is 12. So 40 divided by 12 gives me 3.3. 6.1, again hydrogen relative atomic mass is 1, so it's going to be 6.7 itself. And over here 53.3 divided by 16, which is the relative atomic mass for oxygen. Once you get the answer, you will do the mole ratio, simplest ratio, and you will get 1:2:1, which gives me around CH2O. Next question. The value of Avogadro's constant is 6.02 into 10⁻23. What is the total number of atoms in 2.00 mole of ammonia gas? So we know that 1 mole of Avogadro's constant is going to be 6.02 into 10⁻23. So for 2 moles, it's going to be 2 times Avogadro's constant. So what we're going to do is given as 2 mole, so it's going to be 2 times 6.02 into 10⁻23 multiplied by 4. Why 4? Because ammonia gas consists of 4 atoms. Okay, in total 4 atoms, 3 and 1. So multiply by 4. So you will get 4.816 into 10⁻24, which can round off, and you will get 4.82 10⁻24. Three aqueous solution L, M, N are electrolyzed using inert electrodes. So inert electrodes are given to us. L is a concentrated hydrochloric acid, M is a concentrated aqueous sodium chloride, N is a dilute aqueous sodium chloride, which solution produce a pale yellow-green gas at the anode. Anode means a positive anode, electrode I can say. So it's a positive electrode. So obviously who is going to come is going to come as negative ions. So if I talk about concentrated HCl, chlorine will be a negative charge. So chlorine will come to anode and it will release chlorine gas, and this color would be green color gas. M is a concentrated aqueous sodium chloride. Again, chlorine will come out because it's a concentrated, not an aqueous. So chlorine will come out and it's going to get attached to positive electrode. N is dilute aqueous. Now it's going to be aqueous. Number of OH ions will be more. So over here OH will get deposited at anode and form oxygen gas. Which solution produces a pale yellow green? So as per this we can see that it's going to be L and M. Next question 14. Dilute sulfuric acid is electrolyzed using inert electrodes. What are the ionic half equations for the reaction that take place at each electrode? So as you can see, we're going to have in the electrode, that means in the electrolyte, as H2SO4 and H2O. And if it get dissociate, it will be having an ionic compound, ionic ions, which is H plus dissociate into H plus, SO4 minus, H plus and OH ions. Okay, so it's going to be dilute. So if it's a dilute, then this will go into a positive electrode and this will go into a negative electrode. So if I want to talk about positive electrode and negative electrode, so this is the answer. For positive electrode, OH ions will get deposited and form a oxygen gas, while a negative electrode, negative is cathode, positive is anode. So I'll write here. Okay, so at cathode, hydrogen gas will get released. Which statements about hydrogen oxygen fuel cells are correct? They convert chemical energy into electrical energy. Yes, which is correct. Hydrogen is reduced in the fuel cells. No, it doesn't get reduced, it get oxidized, which loses the electron. So hydrogen loses the electron. They do not produce any atmospheric pollutants. Yes, which is correct. So 1 and 3 is the correct answer. The option is C. Next question. The reaction pathway diagram for the reaction between P and Q to form R and S is shown. Which letter represent the enthalpy change for the reaction? So as you can see, if we want to find the enthalpy change, so it has to be the energy between the reactant and the product. So this is the reactant and this is the product. Difference would be C. So the answer is C. Question number 17. The equation for the complete combustion of methane is shown. So methane plus oxygen gives me carbon dioxide and H2O. So over here the table shows some bond energies. So we need to find the enthalpy change for this reaction. So first thing I have already drawn here, CH4 will be having 4 CH bonds. So what I'm going to do is 4 multiplied by 410. This is the one which I'm going to take. So over here, first, what are we going to do? So it's going to be energy absorbed minus energy release. Okay. So plus we also have in the reactant side oxygen. Oxygen will be having oxygen double bond oxygen. So this will be 2 times oxygen. So it's going to be 2 times 496. Now over here, minus, because the energy is going to get released. So over here, if you would see carbon dioxide, so carbon dioxide will be having a structure like this. So 1 C double bond O, so it's going to be 2, right? So 2 multiplied by 805 and then 4 multiplied by 460. Why? Because we're going to have hydrogen, 2 hydrogen along with oxygen. So oxygen, hydrogen is going to be 2 times. So 2 times of OH. 2 times of OH, it's 2 and 2 multiplied by 4. 4 times of OH is going to be 460. And then you will multiply all the values, you will get minus 818 kilojoule per mole. So the answer is my B. Question number 18. Which change is a physical change? Cracking of an alkane is a chemical change. Evaporating ethanol is a physical change. Fermenting of glucose is a chemical change again. Neutralizing an acid is also a chemical change. So the only change is a physical change is evaporating ethanol. Which statements explain why increasing the temperature is in a reaction involving gases increases the rate of reaction? So if you would see here, it increases the collision frequency between the gas particles. Yes, which is correct. It lowers the activation energy. No, it doesn't lower the activation energy. It increases the kinetic energy of the gas particle. Yes. If we increase the temperature, kinetic energy will also increases. It increases the number of gas particles per unit volume. It doesn't have any relation to per unit volume. So the answer is 1 and 3. Kinetic energy of gas particle increases and the collision frequency will also increase. Question number 20. The equation for the reaction between the ammonia and oxygen is shown in below. Which two gap changes of the reaction condition will both move position of the equilibrium to the right? So first they have given the data as minus 909 kJ per mole, which is the exothermic reaction, and it's going to be forward reaction. Okay, so we have got more data into it. First we will write the number of moles in total for each reactor and product so that our equations or solving equations becomes more easier. So before that we must know about the temperature increase and decrease. So if we have temperature increase, okay, so if the temperature increase, so it will favor the endothermic reaction to reverse the change. If its temperature decreasing, so it will favor exothermic reaction to reverse the change. If we increase the temperature, so it will go towards the least number of molecules, while if we decrease the pressure, it's going to be more number of molecules. It will go towards the more number of molecules. So over here they are asking us which two changes to the reaction condition will both move to the position of equilibrium to the right. So talking about this, we know that first, decreasing the pressure will give me exothermic reaction. It moves towards the right because it favors the exothermic reaction only. Now talking about the pressure, we want the equilibrium to be shift towards the right side. So if it's shifting towards the right side, if you will see here that right side is having more number of particles or moles as compared to the reactant. So over here you're gonna see where I want a number of more particles, so it has to be pressure decreases. If you decrease the pressure, so I'm gonna move more number of particles. So the answer is decreasing the pressure, which will shift the equilibrium to the more number of particles. Now question number 21. Mercury oxide decomposes when heated. Now when it decomposes, so we're going to form mercury plus oxygen. Why is this a reduction reaction? So as you can see here, before in the reactant there was the oxygen present, and after reacting, so it is transferring into a loss of oxygen. There is no oxygen present. So yes, loss of oxygen refers to as reduction. So you can give this an example. So there is a loss of oxygen. No, there is not a gain of oxygen. There are fewer reactants and products. No, no. So let's continue with question number 22nd. So which is some information about two dilute acids is shown. Dilute acid, one is nitric acid, another one is propanoic acid. Acid concentration in mole per decimeter cube, which is 0.1 for nitric acid and zero point 0.4 propanoic acid. pH is given simultaneously as follows. Three statements above the acids are listed. So first is nitric acid has a lower pH because it dissociates more than propanoic acid. Yes, if you have a lower pH, that means it's going to dissociate more than the propanoic acid, which is correct. Propanoic acid has a lower concentration of hydrogen ions than the nitric acid. So yes, this is also correct. Propanoic acid has higher pH because it has a higher concentration? No. So the final answer is 1 and 2. Element E is a metal in group 1 of the periodic table, and element G is a non-metal. of group number 7. So over here I have made easier for you. So element E and element G. Element E belongs to metal, element G belongs to non-metal. Metal are always basic oxide while non-metal are acidic oxide. So both oxides are acidic? No. Both oxides are basic? No. Oxide E is acidic? No, it is basic oxide, so it's incorrect. Oxide of G is acidic and oxide of E is basic, which is correct. Question number 24. Lead 2 sulfate is an insoluble salt. Which method is suitable for obtaining pure solid lead to sulfate, which always comes in a precipitate formation? So let's see. So the method which we are going to use is to form a residue and to pet dry and found out the residue belonging to the lead sulfate. So over here for the first question, mix aqueous lead to nitrate and aqueous potassium sulfate, heat to evaporate. No, we don't want filtrate, we want residue. So the answer is incorrect. Mix aqueous lead to nitrate and aqueous potassium sulfate, filter again. We are not filtering and we are not collecting the filtrate. Mix aqueous lead to nitrate and dilute sulfuric acid, filter and then wash and dry residue. Yes, this is correct. Titrate aqueous lead to hydroxide with dilute sulfuric acid, crystallize, then wash and dry the crystals. First thing, lead to hydroxide is not a liquid state, it's a solid state. So we cannot titrate, we cannot do any titration belonging to this lead to hydroxide. Next question. The elements oxygen and sulfur are in the same group of the periodic table. Which statement about oxygen and sulfur is not correct? So first we should know that group oxygen and sulfur belongs to the same group. Okay, so they are non-metals. Okay, this is correct. They have giant covalent structure. No, they have 6 electrons in outermost shell because it belongs to the same group, which is group number 6. They react together to form an oxide, uh, acidic oxide. So yes, the gaseous is sulfur dioxide. Now, tennessine is at the bottom of group 7 of the periodic table. So, as you know that as we go down the group, the physical state of group 7 changes into gas to liquid, liquid to solid, and the color gets more intense or darker. So, what are the predicted properties of tennessine at a room temperature? So, we know that it starts from gas and it ends with solid. So, it's going to be solid, solid. Okay, colorless gas won't be the answer. You have to eliminate as soon as you get the gas. If you have two options as solids, we need to see which is going to be more reactive than iodine. No. So over here, as you know, the fluorine is more reactive. So more dense than the iodine. Yes, more dense. Next question. An example of sacrificial protection is the fitting of zinc blocks to the outside of a ship still hull. Which statement explain why zinc is used to protect the iron in steel from rusting? So, as you all know, zinc needs to be more reactive than iron. Okay, so over here, let's see if zinc is more reactive. Yes, so zinc is more reactive. Zinc is more reactive. So, second and fourth option get reduced. So over here, it's given as zinc is more reactive than iron. So it loses electron. It loses electron means it get oxidized and then it loses the electron more easily. So the answer is A. 28. Which statement about alloys is correct? Now alloys, you should know that it comes in a different size, okay, and they also cannot slide over each other. So first option says alloys are harder than pure metals because they contain strong intermolecular forces. No, they have a different sizes. Okay, so this is not the answer. Brass is an alloy containing mainly copper and tin. No, it contains copper and zinc. The different size atom in an alloy mean that the layers cannot easily slide over each other. Yes, they cannot slide over each other and they also have different size atom. There are no alloys containing carbon because carbon is a non-metal. No, we do have an alloy called as steel and which contains iron plus carbon. Next question, so the answer is C. Next question. Separate pieces of aluminum foil and copper foil are heated in the air. The copper foil reacts to give a black solid, which is copper oxide. The aluminum foil does not react. Okay, which statement explain these observations? So first you should know that aluminum going to be unreactive. uh, okay, so the answer over here only we can say aluminum is an unreactive layer but copper does not. Okay, so this is the final answer. Question number 30. Which row gives the symbol equation for the formation of carbon monoxide and for the reduction of iron trioxide in a blast furnace? So this is a blast furnace where we have seen how carbon dioxide, okay, how carbon dioxide along with the carbon to form carbon monoxide. So over here, equation for the formation of carbon monoxide, so you get carbon dioxide with carbon to get carbon monoxide. Same goes with for the reduction of iron trioxide, it's going to be iron oxide plus carbon monoxide to give iron along with the carbon dioxide, and carbon monoxide act as a reducing agent. So the final answer is D. A sample of river water contains a high concentration of nitrates from the fertilizers. Which statements about the river water are correct? So, river water is going to have more contamination, more impurities. So, it has a boiling point of 110 degrees Celsius. No, it's going to be more than 100. So, it's going to be impure and it's going to be above 100 degrees Celsius. Its melting point is going to be below 0 degrees Celsius, which is correct. It decreases the melting point. It turns anhydrous cobalt to chloride from pink to blue. No. Anhydrous turns from blue to pink. It turns anhydrous copper to sulfate from white to blue. So yes, it converts into white to blue. So the correct answer is 2 and 4. Which statements above the treatment of domestic water supplies are correct? So, the water undergoes sedimentation to remove dissolved solids? No, it actually removes insoluble solid. So, the answer is wrong. The water is filtered to remove insoluble solid. Okay, as I mentioned, it removes insoluble solid. The water is treated with carbon to remove the taste. Yes, it removes the taste. So, why it removes? Because the carbon is a good absorber, okay, which absorb all the impurities and we can get a good taste. The water is chlorinated to decrease the pH. No, chlorinated we use to kill bacteria, not to decrease the pH. So the answer is and third second and third. Next question, 33. An experiment to find the percentage of oxygen in 150 cm cube of polluted air is shown. The apparatus is left for 1 week. So this is a damp iron wool and is a measuring cylinder which is inverted and is a polluted air. After this time, the volume of gas is measuring in the measuring cylinder is 122 cm cube. So first we will find out how much the volume of gas has been remaining. So 150 minus 122. Why 150? Because it's a polluted overall volume of gas with how much it has been measured over here, which is 122 cm cube. So we'll get 28 cm cube. Now we have to find the percentage of oxygen to the nearest whole number. So percentage of oxygen, which means 28 will be the volume which we have got from here, and this is 150 of total volume of oxygen which was there before, multiply by 100 because we need to find into percentage. So it gives around 18.6, which round off to 90%. So answer is A. Next question. Nitrogen monoxide and carbon monoxide are both removed from the exhaust gases of a car by a catalytic converter. Which statement describes how nitrogen monoxide and carbon monoxide are removed by a catalytic converter? So first you should know the reactions. Over here I have written for you. So nitrogen monoxide reacts with carbon monoxide to get nitrogen gas and carbon dioxide. So if you would see here in the reactant side with nitrogen, oxygen is present, but in the product side there is no oxygen. That means there will be a removal of oxygen. So removal of oxygen means reduction, and if this gets reduced, so over here this will get oxidized and this will turn into oxidation. Okay, so let's see, nitrogen monoxide and carbon monoxide are both reduced? No. Nitrogen monoxide and carbon monoxide both oxidized? No. Nitrogen monoxide is oxidized? No. nitrogen monoxide is not oxidized, it reduced, and vice versa. So the answer is nitrogen monoxide reduced, yes, and carbon monoxide is oxidized. So the final answer is D. Now propane 1-ol, which comes with alcohol group, is oxidized by acidified aqueous potassium manganate in a similar way to ethanol. Which compound is produced by oxidation? So first you should know that whenever an alcohol group is getting oxidized, which is oxidation take place, there will be conversion of alcohol to acid. Okay, and if I want to reduce this, so it's going to be acid to alcohol. So now the question has been asked, alcohol to acid, if it's got oxidized, so what's going to happen? So we know that we have a compound of alcohol and we want to get a product, and this propane 1-ol is getting oxidized. So as I mentioned, all the alcohol, if it get oxidized, it will convert into acid. So from here we can able to understand direct answer as, now over here, see, over here we cannot have, this is an alcohol group, so this cannot be possible. C and D can be possible because both are acid group. How I able to analyze this? Because COOH is present, which is called as carboxylic acid. But over here we have taken propane. Propane means 3 carbon. So I have made the structure 1, 2, 3 at 1 carbon atom, 1, 2, 3 at 1 carbon atom. I have OH group attached. So this will be propane. Why? Because it's 3 carbon, and 1, why? Because it has been attached to first carbon atom, and ol, which is an alcohol group. Now this is a propane 1-ol getting oxidized, and I'm going to get propanoic acid. Okay, so this has changed into COOH. Next question. The structural formula of methyl propane is, so I have actually given the expanded formula of this. So over here the reaction is given to us, methyl propane with chlorine. How many structural isomers with the molecular formula C4HNCl can be formed? Now if you would see here, before it was C4H10. Okay, when it's dealing with the chlorine, it will get substituted, hydrogen will get substituted, and it will get as chlorine. So over here, if I see here, there is 3 carbon atoms. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So if I remove this hydrogen and write chlorine, so I can get one structural formula. If I remove this, it will be similar, so we cannot write again. What about this? If I remove this H, if I write Cl, all three is going to be same, that's which going to be one structural formula. Now let's see, if I remove this second carbon atom hydrogen, so I'll get different isomer structure. So yes, not isomer, this is a structural isomers. So we're going to get two structural isomers. Okay, so this is going to be B. Which statements describe disadvantages of manufacturing ethanol by fermentation? So we gonna see a disadvantages over here. Okay, so we have to focus on disadvantages. So as you can see here, the process uses a renewable resources. So it's a good, this is advantages, right? So we want a disadvantage, so this will get wrong. The process produces impure ethanol. Yes, it does. Mm, impure means, of course, it belongs to a negative to negative. We have to check. The process requires a high temperature. No, it requires low temperature for fermentation. The process is slow. It is actually a disadvantage. So the final answer is 2 and 4. Question number 38. Nylon is made in a polymerization reaction. Which row describes the type of polymerization and identifies the other product of the reaction? So as you can see, whenever we are going to use nylon, so it will go into a condensation polymerization, and with that we're going to remove the water from the reaction. So the other product going to be water. So first is condensation polymerization and the one is water. Question number 39. Which ion forms a green precipitate with an aqueous sodium hydroxide that dissolves in an excess of aqueous sodium hydroxide? So, we already know about the same ion which gives a different color. So, chromium will give green PPT. Next question, 40. A mixture of soluble substances can be separated by a paper chromatography. Each substance can be identified using its RF value. Which formula shows the RF value is calculated. So you should know that solvent has to be in the denominator. Always remember this. It cannot be in the numerator. So RF value is distance traveled by a substance. Okay, so suppose if I have a solvent line here. Okay, so distance travel by a substance, and with this is a solvent. So correct answer is